What is up, people, and welcome back to another Discord bot tutorial video. It has been a while since the last tutorial video, so we're not really learning anything new today. I'm going to be fulfilling a request from my Discord server. They have been telling me, make a video on this, please make a video on this. So what I'm going to show you is how to make a profile command. So this can add some nice sort of, user interactivity with the people that want to use your bot. They can have, like their own profile within the bot that might display information about them, and maybe, like implement some cool stuff to do with profiles. Yeah, let's get started. And once again, I'll remind people, once again, I'm going to say this every video, make sure you guys use the Discord bot template if you are a beginner and you're struggling with starting a Discord bot. If you're struggling with making a Discord bot, or you just want a nice starter package, then make sure you head to the description and go to this link right here, and you can make your own Discord bot using this template. So yeah, aside from that, let's get started with the profile command. Alright, so we're going to make this a normal prefix based command. You can make this a slash command, it's literally up to you, but just as an example, we're going to create a nice simple command. So we'll say command, and then we're going to name this profile, so like so, and then we'll make the method for it, so public async, and then task, and then ctx. So that's the base command setup. You can add on additional parameters like a Discord user, and then set it equal to null. Like if you want to view another user's command. So like that I'll get onto, but let's just create the base command for our profile. So let's just get some basic information like the user. So we're going to say string, and then the username, it is going to be equal to the ctx.user, right? So there we go, autocorrect has got it for us, ctx.user.username. So this is going to get the username of the current user that called this command in the first place. And then we'll have some basic stats. Like in a profile you might have levels or XP or like a balance. So I'm just going to implement just some basic ones. So I'm just going to have a string and then XP, and that's going to be equal to 0. Like we can change this to an int, actually that would make more sense. So int XP is going to be equal to 0, and then the int level is also equal to 0. So these are just some basic sort of stats, and then what we'll do next is make a nice embed message to actually display these stats. So what we'll say is var profile embed is equal to a new Discord embed builder. So embed builder, you can add fields to it if you want. So for that you want a message builder. So actually, yeah, like let's do that actually. So new Discord message builder. So we'll add some fields to it. So we'll say add embed new Discord embed builder. We'll make sure to add the dot over here. Cool. And then like under here we'll start adding our fields. So obviously we need our title. So we'll say with title, and then we'll say like pretty much the user's profile, right? So we'll say username, and then plus, and then profile. We'll also add a color as well, so with color azure, and then we'll add the field. So we'll add a field for XP, and then we'll add a field for level. So we'll say add field. So once again, in the field we need two parameters: the name, that's going to be the title of the field, and then the value that is actually going to hold. So the title of this field is going to be level, and then the value is just going to be level and then toString, because right now it's an int variable and we want the string representative of it. So we'll say level toString. So that's pretty standard. And then we'll add another field for the XP. So like the way I'm going to design the leveling system is that like this is quite common in other bots. So basically if you send a message, it will count as XP. So pretty much the more messages you send, the more XP you get, and then you level up faster, right? So we'll make a system based on that. So once again, let's do XP, and then we'll say XP toString, like so, and then I can add to this later on. So that's our basic embed message set up. So now we just need to send it. So we do await ctx channel send message async, and then the profile embed. So let's just give this a nice test first of all, like just to see if it works. So we'll start it up. So if we do profile, we should get a nice embed with our details. So there we go, my profile, level, and then XP. And then, like, to make this better, we'll just add the user avatar. So what we can do here is say with thumbnail, and then we'll get the avatar, so my profile picture, and then we'll display it as the thumbnail. So that could be a nice addition as well. CTX and then user, and then we say the avatar URL. So that's the avatar URL. And then if we start it up once again and then do profile, it should view, there we go, my avatar as the thumbnail. So that's pretty cool. It's a nice base setup. So you could add loads of different stats if you want to. Like there's, you know, I don't know, like when the user created their account, when they joined a specific server, or, you know, like what roles they have. So stuff like that, it's literally up to you if you want to add them. So like have a mess about with that first. And after that, let's get on to the leveling system finally. Okay, so now that we've designed the profile, now we've got to make the leveling system so that we can actually, you know, like increase the amount of XP that we have, and then in turn, if we get to a certain threshold of XP, then we level up. So basically how I'm going to do this is, once again, I said this, when a user sends a message, it will count as XP, and then, you know, like the more messages they send, the more XP they'll get. So let's make a system that pretty much implements that. So we want to detect a user that sends a message, and then we want to pretty much increment the amount of XP that they have. So first of all, let's actually make the sort of profile system where we store user information, because right now we're just displaying it. We're not actually storing these details. So let's go into our engine folder. So like if you haven't noticed, I've redirected all my classes and pretty much everything into a nice engine folder, so that this is where all of our external sort of commands are managed. Stuff for the YouTube, external classes, pretty much all that kind of stuff I'm putting in a nice engine folder. So what we're going to do is create a new folder in this engine folder. So like once again, like for your bot, I would advise that you do that. You know, make your folder structure as neat as possible. You know, don't make things overcomplicated. Make things simple. You know, like simplicity is the way to go in the world of programming. So what we're going to do is name this the level system. So level system. And this, of course, will also handle the profile storing for us as well. So what we're going to do is create a basic class in here called user. So this will store everything about our user. So like try not to make it the same name as anything else. I'll call it duser, so for Discord user. So we'll press enter, and then obviously we'll make this a public class because we are going to be accessing this in the command. And we're going to store some different stats in here. So let's get the basic one. So obviously we have a public string and the username. So we need that, and then we're going to get set it. And then we have the level and then the XP. So those are going to be int variables, right? So we have a public int and then XP. Whoops, I need to do this, and then get set. And then we have a public int level. So level. So depending on what you have as your stats in your profile embed, like you might want to make them as properties here. So once again, the join that date, the creator that date, what roles they have, you might want to make those as properties here, because we are going to be storing them later on. So we're done with this. All we're going to do is save this and then close it off. So now we're going to make the actual level system. So let's create a new class in here, and we're going to call this the level engine. So the level engine. So this is going to handle all of the leveling system, the storing of profiles, and pretty much that's it. Like that's always going to handle. So once again, we make this public. So first of all, we're going to make a method that stores all of these details in a nice JSON file. So there's multiple ways to store these details once again. So for smaller bots, you want to go for JSON files, because you know those are easy to deal with. Like we've been using JSON a lot throughout this Discord bot, like especially with the token and prefix. You can use JSON to store other things like API keys or user information. So if your bot is going to be widely used, you don't want to use JSON because that's too much. You want to go to a database, which I will cover in sort of like in like the closing stages of the tutorial. Databases are more sort of advanced for you lot right now. So we're going to use JSON because it's pretty easy to use, and it's amazing for small bots. So what we're going to do in this level engine class is we're going to take all of this user information and store it in a JSON file. So let's actually make that JSON file right now. So what we're going to do is make a new item in this level system folder, and we're going to get a normal text file, and what we're going to do is name this I don't know, user info.json. So this is going to store all of our profile information about the user. So we press enter, and then we can start building our JSON file. So we do this. So let's start building this JSON file, because we don't want it to store it as separate members. We want it to store in an array of members. So what we're going to do is make a category. So let's just say user info. So this doesn't really matter. So, and then let's say the members is going to be an array. So let's do a colon, and then there's going to be an array. And then in this array is where we're going to be storing each user and their details. So like, you'll see how this works. Like right now it's going to look very confusing, but this is how you want to do it. So let's save that, and let's get on to writing the method to store user information in a JSON file. Alright, so first of all, let's do the storing method. So what we're going to do is make a public and then a bool. So this is going to return true or false, and we need it to be bool so that we can check for errors, because if it failed to store in the file for some reason, we don't want the whole thing to crash. So that's why we want the return type to be a bool, so that we can check if it returned true or false, and then we can do error handling to make sure that the whole thing doesn't crash. So let's name this store user details, and then this is going to take in the D user that we just made here. So we're going to pass in a D user into this method. So we're going to say D user, and then we'll name it user. So that's our basic method set up there. So let's close it. Let's close this, and let's close this. All right. Like, the way we want to do this is, first of all, let's actually pass in these details into the D user command, the D user class. So let's first of all do that. So var user details, and we're going to make a new instance of the D user. So we're going to say new D user. So like so. And then in this class, we're going to store all of those details there. So we're going to say the username is equal to the username. Cool. And then like, since this is going to be a new user, we want to pretty much store the XP and level as 0 anyway. We want them to start from the beginning. So what we're going to do is say the XP, or let's start with the level. Let's just start at 1, because that makes more sense, right? Like, there's no such thing as a level 0. So what we're going to do is say level equals 1, and then the XP is obviously equal to 0. So like so. And then what we're going to do is make a new instance of the level engine right here. So what we're going to do is say var level engine is equal to a new level engine. Cool. And then what we're going to do is execute this method, the store user details. Like, I know we haven't coded it just yet, but this will all make sense. So what we'll do is say the level engine, and then we'll say store user details, and then we'll pass in our user details over here. So that's cool. And obviously, like, we want to store it in a variable, so we say var process, because it is a bool, right? So okay, that's all cool. Let's stop with that. Let's actually program this to store these details into our JSON file over here. So what we're going to do is get the path of this JSON file first. So what we're going to do is say var path, and this is going to be different for different computers. So make sure that you set the path of your own JSON file, not copy in mind over here. So what we're going to do is say @ and then open a few speech marks, because this is a path string, not a normal string. And what we're going to do is right click on the JSON file, and then we click copy full path, and then we paste it in right here. So once again, this is going to be different for your systems, but this is the way to do it. So this is a JSON file, so we want to read it. So what we do is say var JSON is equal to file, so file system.io, and then we're going to say read all text as the path. So bear in mind, the way I'm doing this, I'm not using a stream reader, and you'll see why. There's a good reason why I'm not using a stream reader here. So we've read the JSON file, so now we actually need to parse it. So we say var, let's name this JSON object, and then we'll say JObject, and then parse, and then we'll parse that JSON file that we just read. So we've read it, we've parsed it as an object. So now we need to actually store our user details in the members array. So the members array is where we're storing our user details. So what we do is get that members array. So we say var members is equal to the JSON objects, and then we say members. So this is our members array of the JSON file, and this is where we're trying to store it. Like, the reason I'm doing this is because it's easier to access an array and pretty much add or change information in this JSON file. It makes it so much more easier than doing it as separate members. So that's why I'm doing it this way. Like, if you understand JSON, then you'll probably get a better understanding of what I'm trying to say. So what we're going to do is get this array, and we're going to turn it into a list so that we can add stuff to it, right? So, you know, like, that's what I meant by it's just more easier to add or change stuff or even erase stuff from this JSON file. So what we say is toObject, and then we turn it into a list. So we say list, and then we're storing D users in here, right? So we're storing an array of D users. So we say D user, and then we close them both off, and then we do our brackets. So this line pretty much turns our members array into a list. So as you can see, the var members variable is a list of D users. So we're trying to add to this list. So what we can simply do is just say member, and then we say add, and then we just add the user, because that's what we're passing in, right? So we're passing in our user over here. So this will add it to the list. So now the last step to do is pretty much just compile it all together and write it to the JSON file. So what we do is say JSON object, the members, and then we set this equal to JArray from objects and then the members. So this will compile everything together. And then the last step to do is obviously write it to the JSON file. So we say file, and then write all text to the path. So that's our JSON file over here, and then we write our JSON object that's been compiled all together. So we say JSON object to string. So what this code is going to do is pretty much read the JSON file, parse it so that we can use it in code, so that we can get its information and pretty much turn it into lists or dictionaries, and pretty much add stuff to this JSON file. So we say members.add, and then the user that we're passing in, and then we compile it all together and write it to the JSON file. And what we want to do after this is return true, because as soon as all of this is done, it's been a success, right? So we want to let the method know that it's returned a true, and from then on we can do error handling, that it is a success. So if it is a success, then move on. If it failed, then you show the error message, right? So right now we're not handling errors here. So what we want to do is put this in a try catch. So we say try, and then we put all of this code in that try block, like so. And then we're going to say catch, and then we're going to catch an exception. So exception EX. So if it actually catched an error and something went wrong in this code, then we're going to return false, right? It makes sense to do that. So like, to make this easier, I can return a bool and a string, and then also return the error message if you want. But for now, I'm just going to do this. So that's the code to store a file. So like, this is the code to store all of our user details in the JSON file. So let's give this a go. So far it's all good. So let's handle the errors over here. So what we'll do is say if the process is true, then we send the embed, right? We it successfully stored the details So let's just go ahead and display the embed. So we'll copy all of this code and then paste it in here. So like that's if it is true, else it's going to assume that it's false. So in here, we'll just say an error message saying, you know, something went wrong when storing your information. Set the color to red. So Discord color and then red. So let's give that a try. Obviously, let me just send it. So await CTX channel send message async with the embed as the failed message. All right, cool. So what I'm going to do is start the bot up, but I'm also going to view the JSON file because I want to view this live and see if that code works. So what I'm going to do is execute the profile command first. So profile. So looks like it set the embed. So that means it was a success. So let's check that JSON file, and as you can see, that looks pretty cool. So it stored my username, and then my XP is 0, and then my level is 1. That's pretty cool, right? So so far that works. So like, let's see what happens if we do it again. So if we do profile, then it sends it again, and it's going to store it as a duplicate. So to get rid of this error of duplicate profiles being created, we need to add a check in our profile command to check if the user exists in the existing JSON file, right? So we need to write another method in this class that checks if the user exists in this JSON file, and if they already exist, then you don't do anything, right? Because once again, we don't want duplicate data being in this JSON file or your database, or you know, wherever you're storing data. You only want one entry of a user to exist, right? So we're going to write another method that checks the JSON file and checks if a user already exists in this JSON file. So pretty much what we'll end up doing in this command is we'll first check for the user when they do profile, and then if they don't exist, then it's going to store their details in the JSON file and then display the embed. But if it already exists, then it's going to get their details from the JSON file and display it in this embed. So we won't actually end up having to use these variables. We're just going to get the details directly from the JSON file and display it in this embed. So that should be our end result. Our end result should be we get our user details from the JSON file and then display it in the embed. So this embed should not contain things like this username string, the XP equals 0. It should just get it from the JSON file. So if the XP is 100, then it should just get it as 100 and display it in this embed. So this command should undergo a whole transformation once we're done with this code. So let's code that check method. So what we're going to do is make another public bool method. So we'll say public bool, and this time we're going to check if a user exists, right? So we'll say check user exists. Cool. And while we're at it, let's add another property to this duser class. We're going to add the guild ID, because if you have your bot in multiple servers, you know, like you want to make sure that you know, like there's different profiles for different guilds, because like you don't want a user to have 100 XP in one server and then 100 XP in another server, because that's just sort of cheating, right? So let's add the guild ID so that user can have separate profiles in separate guilds. So let's add a public and then a ulong guild ID, because a guild ID is a ulong type. So let's add that in, and then let's obviously get rid of all these members because we have added a guild ID into this now. So let's go back to the check method. So in this method, we're going to check for the guild and the username. So first of all, we'll say string username, so string and then the username, and then we'll also check for their guild ID to see if their separate profile exists, right? So we'll say ulong and then the guild ID. So we want to check for these two things, and then if they do exist, then we return a true, else we return a false. So once again, it's going to be a little similar code, but like you'll see how it works. So for this, let's use our stream reader because we're reading from a JSON file. So there's no need to do this. This code is only for storing to a JSON file, and that's why it's in this format. But if you're reading a JSON file, then we use our stream reader. So we say using our stream reader, and we'll call it SR as per the standards, and we say new stream reader, and then we're reading the JSON file. So we say user info.json, or pretty much the name of your JSON file. Make sure it's the exact same name, and obviously this needs to be in your bin debug folder. What we'll do in the stream reader is obviously read the JSON file. So we'll say string JSON is equal to the SR read to end. So like usual, we're pretty much doing the same thing here, and then we're going to deserialize this JSON file. Like the way we're doing this is very similar to the way we read our prefix and token. So since we have additional sort of members in this JSON file, we actually need to lay them out in a separate class. So what we'll do underneath here, so pretty much underneath this whole class, is we're going to lay out the foundation of that JSON file. So what we'll do is say class, and then the level JSON file. So this class will pretty much contain what our JSON file looks like, but in code. So pretty much a code representation of what our JSON file looks like. So we have a user info, that's our category, and then we have an array of members over here. So what we do is say public string, and then our category name. So our category name is user info. Let's copy that. So user info, and then we obviously get set it. So get, and then set. And then we have an array of members. But what we're actually storing in these members is pretty much this class right here. So we're pretty much storing this class into this JSON file, and obviously they're going to be filled with user details. So realistically, our members is going to be of type duser. So we say public, and then duser, and obviously it's an array like I mentioned. So we say array, and then the members. So once again, make sure it's the exact same name. So it's members all in lowercase, and then we get set it. So this contains our code representation of the JSON file. So now we can use it in this code to actually deserialize it. So what we do is say the level JSON file. So we're making it of this type, and let's just say the user to get, and then we say JSON convert, and then we deserialize the object as the level JSON file, as the JSON file that we just read. So it's literally the exact same code as to where we're reading our token and prefix. So we're deserializing our JSON file into this format, the level JSON file, which has our category name, and then it's an array of D users. So hopefully that makes sense. So next of all, we need to check the user, because we're trying to check if a user exists. So right now, we want to put for each through the members array. So what we say is for each var user in the user to get, and then we go through the members, because it's an array, right? We want to for each through it and check if the username and the guild ID exist in this JSON file, and that's how we know if the user exists in our database, pretty much. So let's do that. So it's a simple if statement, right? So we say if the username, so user.username. So as you can see, all of our different properties are here because it's a type D user. So if the username is equal to the username that we're passing in, and the username, the user.guild ID is equal to the guild ID that we're passing in, then we return true. Because at that point, we know that a user exists in this JSON file, because both of these conditions are true, right? So else, then we just do nothing. We want to keep looping through it until it finds a result. So else we do nothing. And then after the whole for each loop, if it still didn't find a user, then we return false, right? It makes sense. So pretty much after all this, if it still doesn't find a user, then we return false. Else, if the username matches, then we return true. So this little method pretty much has us sorted, and like this also prevents like duplicate profiles from being stored into the JSON file. So let's implement that in our command now. So far, what we're doing is pretty messed up, because we're pretty much storing the user every time the the user calls this profile command. So we only want the user details to be stored if that user doesn't exist in the database. So let's actually get rid of all this code. I know it seems very sort of, it seems very weird for me to do this, but you'll see why I'm doing this. So we'll get all of this code. So we're left with this. So we're creating a new instance of the D user. We're storing all of that stuff. So while we're at it, we'll store the guild ID as well. So the guild ID is equal to the CTX guild and then ID. So pretty much we can get rid of these two variables. So that's all we need. So the first thing we need to do is check if that user exists in the database, right? So we do level engine, and then we use that method, check user exists, that we just wrote. So we say check user exists, and we need to pass in the details of the user. So the username and then the guild ID. So I think maybe I need to create those variables again. So we say string username equals CTX user username, and then the guild ID is a ulong. So ulong guild ID is equal to the CTX guild and then ID. Cool. And then like this is fine because we're still passing it in anyway. So what this wants is the username and the guild ID. So let's pass those in. So username and then the guild ID. Cool. So that's cool. And since this is a bool, we want to store this in a variable. So we say var, and let's name this does exist. So does exist will either be true or false. So if does exist is false, that means it doesn't exist, right? So what happens if it's not false? Well, that means the user doesn't exist in the JSON file, right? So if it doesn't exist, we want to store it, or otherwise we can't get their details. So what we do is say if does exist is equal to false. So when this condition is false, we store the user details. So we say level engine store user details, and then we store the user details, that class that we've got up here, pretty much. Alright, so now we've done that, we want to check for errors in this method once again, because this store user details is once again a bool. So we want to once again check if this is a true or false, and if the user details stored 100% correctly. So we want to store this in a variable once again. So we say var is stored, like so. So we store it, and once again we do another if statement. So we say if is stored is equal to true, I guess. So we'll do is equal to true. Then we'll send a nice embed message saying, like your details have successfully been stored. Execute this command again to view your profile. So we'll say var success message is equal to a new Discord embed builder. And then we'll set the title as successfully stored profile, or like successfully created profile. I think that makes sense to the end user. So successfully created profile. And then as the description, we'll say please execute profile again to view your profile. It's going to assume the opposite. So if it's false, then we say the failed message is the error message. So we'll just say title as something went wrong when storing your profile, or like when creating your profile. And then we set the color as red. Cool. And obviously we have to send both of these messages, so we do await. So pretty much once all this is done, we can also display their profile here. So if the profile was successfully stored, then we say successfully created profile, and then we may as well display their profile underneath. So we say var profile is equal to a new Discord message builder. Like, that's cool. So like I'll do this later because I want to pull the profile details directly from the JSON file. So once again, I said I'm not going to end up using any of these local variables. I want to pull it directly from the JSON file. So that's hopefully what our end result should be. So I'm going to leave this later. So this is all under the if statement that does exist is equal to false. But what if it's true? What if it already exists? Well, if it already exists, then we just want to pull the information and just display it as is. So that's why we're going to make one last method, and that's to pretty much pull the information from the JSON file and return a duser that contains all of the information that we need, and then we could just go through this class and display it in the embed message. So let's make that final method that gets a user from the JSON file. So what we do here is say public, and this time the return type is going to be a duser. So we're going to return a duser if it successfully gets a user based on the username and the guild ID. So we say get user. So that's going to be the name of this method. And then it's once again, we're going to give it a username and then the guild ID. So ulong and then the guild ID. Because once again, like if your bot is in multiple servers and you have one user in both of those servers, then you're gonna have two separate profiles that are the same, but a different guild ID. So that makes sure that it has different amounts of XP and different amounts of levels, and it's not the same thing. So in here, we're going to get the user based on their username and the guild ID, if it exists, obviously. So once again, it's going to be the same code as this, to be honest. So what we can do is pretty much copy most of this code over, well, pretty much all of it. So we'll copy that over. But instead of returning true and false, we return the user. So if it successfully found a user, then we return a new duser. And then we get the user details from there. And then if it didn't find anything, then we say return and then null. Because at that point it hasn't found anything and it's just gonna return nothing. So it's the exact same code, but instead of actually checking the user, we're actually getting the user details and we're returning it in this method. So once again, let me explain this code. So it's going to read the JSON file using the stream reader. It's going to deserialize it in the level JSON file format. Once again, this is the code representation of this JSON file right here. And what we're going to do is for each through each user in the members array, and then we're checking if the username is equal to these parameters that we set here. So if the username matches the username that we pass in and the guild ID matches with the guild ID that we're passing in here, then we return the user details. So here we say the username is equal to the user.username, the guild ID is equal to the user.guild ID, the XP is equal to the user.xp, and then the level is equal to the user.level. And that's pretty much all we need there. So that's going to return a new instance of the duser so that we can use it here. So once again, this false means that the user doesn't exist. So what we're going to do is put an else here, and it's going to assume the opposite once again. So if does exist equals true, then that means the user already exists, right? So what we need to do is say level engine, and then we say get user. So we want to get the user, and then obviously store it in a variable, because this is going to return a duser. So we say var user details is equal to that method, and we'll pass in the details. So I think I already have a variable. So we'll say, I don't know, like the pulled user. So it, like pretty much pulled it from the JSON file or something like that. So once again, this needs the username and the guild ID. So we'll pass in our username and the guild ID. Cool. And once again, we display the same embed. So realistically, we want to do the same line over here, because it stored it. So now we want to get the user details and display it in the embed. So I'm going to do it here and then just copy it over here as well. So once again, let's add the details. So we'll say with color as Discord color, and let's make it blue. Like let's have something different for once, because I'm always using Azure, or let's do it aquamarine because that's a different color for once. So we'll say with title. Instead of using this variable, the username, we're going to get the user details from this variable, the pooled user. So we'll say pooled user dot username. So this is hopefully, you know, like this is what we want. Like this is our end result. We want to get the user details directly from the JSON file, and then we add on our apostrophe S and then profile. Cool. And then we say let's add our field. So we'll say add field, and that's going to be our level. So our level. So this time it's not going to be 0 or 1 or hard coded. The value is simply going to be the pooled user dot level. So it's just going to get the details directly from the JSON file once again. And since this is a int variable, all we got to do is just say toString. Simple as that. And then we do the same thing for our XP. So we say add field and then the XP. So we'll say pooled user dot XP toString. And let's make these in line with each other, you know, just to make it look neater. So we'll set these to true. So the inline parameter is true. So that'll put them side by side. So true. And let's also add the thumbnail. So let's also add that to the D user. So we'll say the public string and then the avatar link. So avatar URL. So we'll get set that. So once again, you know, like we don't have to change anything in the actual level engine because it's just going to use the D user as is. So we can just add as many parameters as we want to this class, or you know, properties. That's a better name for it. So let's add the avatar link is going to be equal to the CTX user and the avatar URL. Cool. So let's put that in as the thumbnail. So we'll say with thumbnail, and notice how easy it is. So look, like since I added it to the D user, notice how I don't have to do anything else. So I do pooled user, and then I could just do the avatar URL from here. I didn't do anything other than just add it to the class, and magically it's appeared here because it's using that class as the return type. So that's how it's so sort of, it flows well. So there's the avatar link. So I think we're ready to go. So we'll send this message. So we'll do await and then CTX channel send message async and the profile, and then we'll just copy and paste this over here. Cool. So same variables. So let's give this a test. So first we'll test it, and then I'll explain it in more detail. So cool, it's all started up. Let me load up the JSON file. So actually, yeah, let me actually step through this application. So what I'm gonna do is put a breakpoint right here where the level engine has been initialized for the first time. So let's do profile. So right now, my user details don't exist in the JSON file, so we have to create it, right? So let's do profile, and as you can see, the debugger, the debugger has been triggered. So let's step through it. Okay, so the first thing it's going to do is check for the user if it exists in the JSON file, and as you can see, it's going to pass my username, and it's going to pass the guild ID of the server I'm in. So let's step through that and let's see what it returned. It returned a false, because my user details don't exist in that file. So the first if statement, is the does exist variable false? Yes, it is. So it's going to go into that if statement. So now it's going to store the user details. Cool. So it's going to, like we did it up here, like again this class. So it's going to store those user details. Cool. So like we can view it right here if you want. So my level is 1. There's my username, there's my avatar link, there's my guild ID. Cool. So let's see if that's stored. So it returned a true. So it's successfully stored. And then if we check the JSON file, I don't think it's going to be there right now, but let's just carry on. So if stored is true, it is true. It's going to display the successful message. Cool. And then it's going to display our profile. So if we press continue, then we should get, there we go, look at that, that looks pretty cool. So that looks like it didn't display my like my avatar link. Like I don't know what went wrong there, but I will check that later on. If we check the JSON file, so this is not the correct JSON file, it's going to be the one in my bin debug folder. So let's get our userinfo.json, and yeah, as you can see there, that's what it should look like. Like obviously this file is going to be a lot more bigger for you lot, because you're actually going to have multiple people using this command, and your JSON file is just going to grow from then on. So let me get rid of that breakpoint, and then let's just execute it as is. So get rid of this. So if I just do profile now, it should just display my profile, and there we go. It hasn't displayed this successfully created profile embed, and that's because my profile details already exist. So it hasn't gone through this if statement right here. So does exist would be true at that point. So let me debug through here. Debug through here and see why it's not getting my like my thumbnail. So let's do profile again, and let's see why it's not displaying the thumbnail. Let's see. So what is pulled user right now? So looks like avatar URL is null. Okay, where's it gone wrong? Yeah, like I'm not actually adding it to here, so I need to actually add the avatar. Yeah, cool. Okay, user.avatar link. So let's start that up again, and it should work. So let's do profile again, and then if we check the details, then pulled user should contain, there we go, there's my avatar link. So we press continue. There we go. That's the completed result, guys. That's pretty much it. So there's our profile. Now the last step is, how do I level up? So that's what, so you know, like that's the whole premise of this whole level system. You know, like storing the user details is a bit of a hefty process. So that's why that's why I have to go through all this code just to store the user details. So now let's get on to the leveling part. So when a user sends a message, I said gain XP. And that's very simple, because what we do is, all we got to do is go to our bot.cs file, and then we hook in to one of the event handlers. So the message created. So looks like I've already got a message like event handler here, but I can add to it, so that's fine. So pretty much this message created event is going to fire every time a user sends a message. So for example, if I just do test, that counts. That's going to trigger the event handler. That's going to trigger this message created event handler. So we need to program this method to increase XP based on if they sent a message. So let's do that. What we're going to do is make a new instance of the level engine. So what we'll do is say var level engine is equal to a new level engine. Alright, so what we're going to do in this level engine class is we're going to add another method for leveling up. So right, we want to add XP to a existing user, and that means we have to modify the members in this JSON file. So we actually need to get the JSON file and get the user from it, but also modify it. So once again, we need to do some more writing. So it's going to be like the similar code to this right here. So let's do that. So let's go under here and let's say public. And once again, this is going to be a bool because we want it to return true or false if it successfully changed the JSON file. And what we're going to do is name this add XP. So this will also handle the leveling up, but we'll just name this add XP. So once again, we need to pass in the username and then the ulong guild ID. So let's make a property up here, and we'll name this public bool, and then we'll name this leveled up. And what we'll do is set this equal to false. So this is the variable that we're going to use if a user has leveled up. So if a user has reached a certain threshold of XP, then we set this to true, and that's how the bot knows that a user is going to level up from level 1 to level 2, or from level 3 to level 4, etc, etc. So we need this bool variable over here because we're going to be using it down here, and also in the event handler as well. So once again, we are going to read the JSON file. So I'm going to get my path up here. So we'll copy and paste that. So once again, it's going to be different for you lot. Make sure you don't copy and paste my code. And once again, we're going to read the JSON. So var JSON is equal to file, read all text, and then the path, and then we're going to pass it. So var JSON objects is equal to the J objects, J objects, and then pass, and then the JSON. And then once again, we get the members. Cool. So now instead of doing members.add user, we want to modify a current user and then add XP to them. So what we do is get a user based on the username and then the guild ID once again. So once again, we do a for each loop. So for each var user in the members. We do that same if statement. So if the member knows it is so that's the user, isn't it? So user.username is equal to the username that we're passing in, and the guild ID. So user.guild guild ID is equal to the guild ID. So what we want to do here is add XP onto their XP like XP property over here. So this is up to you. So you can increment XP at whatever rate you want. So what I'm going to do is say the user.xp is equal to the user XP again, and what we're going to do is add, I don't know, 0.5 to it. So we'll add 0.5 to their XP, and let's make them a double because it is a decimal, right? So we'll make this a double, and then the like the level is a whole number, so we'll let that be int. So that should work. So yeah, so we're adding 0.5 to it, and every time a user sends a message, it's going to increment their XP by 0.5. So once again, this is up to you how you want to do it. So that's adding XP. So what if they level up? So this is where you get to set your level threshold. So at what point do they level up? So what we'll do is say if the user.xp, and let's set it a threshold. So let's say it is less than or equal to, I don't know, 10. So this is just an example. 10, 100, 1000, and also for different levels, you can add multiple if statements. So if the user level is 1, or if the user level is 2, I'm just going to do it for every single level. So it seems very inefficient, obviously, but once again, it's an example, and you lot can take this code and tweak it and make it better for yourselves. So if the like if the user XP reaches 10, then what we're going to do is say the level up is equal to true, because at that point the user has leveled up. So they, like they need to level up. So what we'll do is say the user dot level plus plus. So this will increment their level by 1 if the user XP is 10. So like that should make sense. And then we'll also reset their XP to 0, because you don't want a user to level up and then have the same XP. So we'll say user.xp is equal to 0. We level them up by 1 and then set their XP to 0, or reset it pretty much. So we're done. We made all the modifications we need to. So now after this for each loop, we pretty much compile it all together and write it back to the JSON file. So we say JSON object members equals, once again, the J array from object members, and then write it all to the JSON file. So we say file write all text to the path, and then we say JSON object to string. So we wrote our modifications to the JSON file. So after all this, we need to say return and then true. And once again, to prevent this whole thing from crashing, we put this in a try catch block. So we say try, and then we copy all this code and then paste it in here, and then we say catch exception.ex, and then we return false. So that's our code for adding XP. So once again, the like the amount of XP that you want to add is up to you, and then your XP threshold is obviously up to you once again. So this could be 10, 100, 1,000, whatever. So now we need to execute this in the bot.cs file. So if the user sends a message, then we say var add XP, so added XP is equal to the level engine and then add XP. So we need to pass in the username once again and then the guild ID. So how do we do that from here? Because there's no CTX. Well, there is the message create event arg, so we can get the username from there. So what we do is say E and then the author of the message. So the author of the user that sent that message in the first place. So author and then the username. So that's their username, and then the guild ID is once again the same thing. The E, guild, and then ID. So like that's all done. So now we need to actually check if the user leveled up and then send an embed message saying that the user leveled up, right? So let's do a simple if statement here and then say if the level engine and then the leveled up property, right? So right now this is all been set to false because at any point in this class no one's leveled up at the moment, but only at this point is the leveled up equal to true, and like the XP threshold has been reached. So if it returned true, like so, then that means, you know, some user has leveled up, right? So, you know, some random user that sent a message has leveled up. So let's just send a nice embed message saying that, you know, like that user who sent the message has leveled up through this bot. So let's create a nice embed message saying leveled up. The current user has leveled up, right? So we'll say the e.author and the username plus, and then we'll say that username has leveled up. So that's cool. And then the description will set as what, you know, like what level they are currently. So their current level is equal to, and then we use our get user method to get that current user and get their level. So we can do this all in one line if you see what I'm doing here. So what we'll do is say level engine and then get user. So we'll pass in their details. So the username, so e.author username, and then the guild ID, e.guild, and then the ID. And this is all in one method. So we'll just say the level. Simple as that, because this method is going to return a D user. So we can just say dot level and get their level directly from there. And then obviously we can do this toString and then make it even better. And then obviously set the color. Let's do Discord color. And then what colors are there? Let's do something interesting. So we'll say, what's this? Chart ruse. Let's do that. And then we'll send it back to the channel where the message was sent from. So we'll do await. And then we'll do e.channel send message async, and then we'll send the embed. So we'll say embed, and then the leveled up message, and then we'll get rid of this because we are like awaiting something. So like now we don't need to return the task because one has already been awaited for us. Like after all this code, let's test out the leveling system. So what we'll do is put a breakpoint here. So let's just say test. So test, and looks like the debugger was triggered. Cool. So let's step through it. So it's created the level engine, and then let's test out this add XP. So right now my XP is 0. So what this message, so after this method, my XP should be 0.5. So let's do that. And then added XP is true now. So if leveled up equals true, leveled up equals false now. So now it's just going to ignore that and then just continue. So if I do profile now, so let me restart the bot. So I'm going to send another message for profile. So my XP now should be 1. And there we go. My XP is now 1. So now let me just spam a few messages. So we'll do test, and then we'll just spam it. So we'll just spam it as many times as we can. And then now let's do profile. And as you can see, my XP is now 5.5. So let me keep on spamming until I reach 10. So it's going to be 6, 6.5, 7, 7.5, 8, 8.5, 9, and then 9.5. And then right now my XP is 9.5. So if I send another test, it should give me the level up message. So there we go. Look at that. That looks sick. So my XP has reached 10. And it's let me know that I've leveled up. So if I do profile now, my level is now 2, and then my XP is now 0.5 because I just sent a message. So the resetting also works. So there you go, guys. That is a simple profile command and a simple leveling system, pretty much all shown to you in real time. And I've explained how the code works, how the event handler works for this specific command, and pretty much how to get a nice looking profile in your Discord bot. So hopefully you guys enjoy this video. If you have any more questions, then obviously make sure to comment below or ask in the Discord server once again. It's a long one, but that's just how it is. So yeah, make sure you guys sub to the channel, and I'll see you lot in the next one. Peace out.